What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Danny the Bull. I'm here with Hello K. Special live stream. I've been looking forward to this one. I'm here with. Been looking forward to this one for a while. Welcome aboard, Hello K. It's nice to finally meet you.
Yeah, nice to see you too, Danny. Thanks for having me on. First time I've been on your channel, so should be fun.
So, one of the reasons I've been looking forward to this so much is because of your background as a software engineer, right? How long have you been in that field?
So I've been in tech field for around about 4 and a bit years now. Because I've changed careers multiple times. For people who do know me, like before tech, I used to be an equity analyst at Bloomberg. So I was in finance for a bit. Before that, I was a high school science teacher. Before that, because I've got a science background, I was a stem cell researcher. So I've kind of hopped between different professions, but I always say like going to tech was the best decision I made in terms of like career opportunities, growth, and just how much stuff there is to learn. Like hands down, it beats everything else.
And how long were you a teacher for?
That was 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in education also. I taught for 14 years.
Wow.
Then I was a dean. Now I'm an assistant principal. I've been an assistant principal for about 7 years now. So I've spent my whole career in education. So it's interesting for sure.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I was saying that I always appreciate your perspective and input because of that background in tech, because a lot of us speculate, we talk about VeVe and OMI, but these things are very abstract unless you understand the technology behind it and what goes on in the background. So I always enjoy getting your take on things. And
nice, thank you.
As you've seen, there's been a lot of FUD recently with VeVe. A lot of people are upset. It seems like FUD and price action kind of have this inverse correlation, right? When prices go down, FUD goes up. But what do you make of the, the frustrations by people, VeVe fam, based on a lot of the pushbacks on deadlines and things like that?
Yeah. I mean, humans are just emotional creatures, aren't they? So you're always gonna have that. And at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, like, why are people ultimately upset? And yes, there are delays, there are, certain things that don't meet people's expectations. There are, certain priorities which, some people don't like. They want other things prioritized, for example, search bar. That's kind of an ongoing meme now. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what it all comes down to, from what I've noticed, just in general, not just specifically to VeVe, it all comes down to, are people making money or are they losing money? And, a lot of people came into VeVe during the hype in January. And if you came in January, most likely your bags, your investment is down at this point. Most likely, some people, maybe they're break even, maybe they're in a bit of profit, depends. So yeah, a lot of people don't want to ever take kind of ownership of their own decisions. It's just easier to blame other people. And so VeVe is the easy target here. That being said, yeah, they've definitely, they've definitely got a lot of room for improvement. But, at the end of the day, what makes me happy is that they are listening and they are actively trying to improve. Now, that being said, I think the disconnect is, as you know as well, is a lot of people don't have that background when it comes to, how a startup works or how tech works or just the general of how the financial markets work. Like, you'd be surprised how many people came into VeVe who had never ever purchased any stocks before in their life. They had no idea how monetary policy works. They have no idea how agile or the process of building and running a software development team works. They don't know any of this. They just came in because they were fans of the IP and they heard that NFTs, people getting rich off it, and they combined the two. And that's just kind of like how it's, how a lot of the flood of people kind of came in. And Reese spoke about this before, where part of their kind of focus is on education, right? They've got the seminar tomorrow with Collective Shift. So kind of bringing the audience in, that wasn't too much of a problem for VeVe, because they have the licenses, the brands, they rode the last bull run as well, which was great. Now it's all about retaining that audience and kind of getting them to grow with the platform. And that's the real challenge now. It's easy to get people into the product, but to retain them is difficult. And so, now it's all about, how do we educate these collectors on the OMI token? How do we educate them on the development process, the timelines? And, they have help with, yourself, myself, people who have been in the space for a while. They put out, like a solid kind of social media kind of marketing team as well. I know they've hired some more on the social media side recently. But ultimately, it just comes down to, tuition. Like, are people willing to learn? If they're willing to learn, then, eventually they'll realize this is all part of the process. Yeah, I'm kind of rambling now. But yeah, ultimately, I would say, yeah, VeVe does definitely have to kind of execute, but at the same time, the audience needs to also set realistic expectations. The initial VeVe app, if you look back on the white paper, it was delayed by nearly 2 years. So imagine how much people were panicking who had bought into this ICO. There was no product, and the product had been delayed for 2 years. Like, a lot of people did sell their OMI very, very early on, like before it blew up. And those people are kind of kicking themselves now. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think people have learned about setting realistic expectations. I think the team has also learned they don't give specific deadlines now. They're taking things quarter by quarter, and it seems like one thing at a time, of honing in on certain things. What do you think it'll take for them to scale? And do you think they have what it takes right now to scale and deliver on all the things that they've promised and the community has come to expect?
Yes, so that's a good question. So I'll preface by saying all the people, or not all the, well, yeah, I mean, there's a small group of people who are like, you're always criticizing the team on Twitter. I bet you wouldn't say any of that stuff to their face. Like, that was completely wrong. I literally said way more than what I say on Twitter, like to Dan, to Reese. And because they understand where these questions are coming from, they're very, very open to answering these questions. Now, that being said, I'm very transparent. After speaking to Dan more in person, to Reese more in person, I didn't get the breadth and the depth of answers that I was looking for. So I didn't feel confident in, as confident after I'd, tried to get answers, and that's not because they aren't trying. And that's not because, in the back end that they're not, working on the stuff that I'm, talking to them about. It's because they're not technical people. And that's a very fair, a fair point. And this is always a challenge, because it's a tech company. You would need to kind of convey the tech side of things to the audience, but the people who face the audience, none of them are really tech people. So that's in itself is a challenge. Now, that being said, fortunately, one of their lead developers, Kunal, he came to DCon, and after DCon, like the day after, he wanted to just meet up for dinner, because he was kind of, visiting London from India. And so, I kind of showed him around a bit, and he was able to answer the questions I had in very, very good detail. So just to share some of our discussion, right? One of the things we discussed is, it's kind of public now. I guess they haven't announced it, but the original CTO, Michael Duffy, he's no longer around. I mean, he hasn't been around for a while, but they did replace him with a new CTO, and the new CTO, his specialty is predominantly within scaling up tech teams. And that's exactly what they needed. And they specifically chose this guy. He's got a very strong resume. He's very, very good on the technical side, but he's not coming in as like someone to focus on the engineering directly. He's coming in to help scale up that engineering team and kind of restructure, the way the company works. So part of that restructuring process is, in the past, they would have their devs, they've got like certain features they need to deliver on and build up, and they would kind of prioritize those. It was very for lack of a better word, very startup-y, right? Now they're going more into like how an established company would operate. So some of the changes they've made is they now have squads which are kind of in charge of certain features of the app. And typically in a dev team, you have like your software developers, you've got like your product manager who kind of oversees the development and communicates with the business side the requirements, and helps establish those deadlines and things like that. So they've got proper product managers now. I think everyone kind of knows that Reese is kind of the product manager on the OUP side. They've got a separate kind of team of developers on the OUP side. No, it's not Mike Adler. It's someone that no one would know. I believe they will announce who he is properly when they're ready to do that. But at the moment, no one really knows who he is. So they've got squads dedicated to different features of the app. So Kunal, he's focused on the MCP side of the app. So he doesn't know too much of the OUP because he's not working on it, but there is a solid team of devs working on it. And Reese is kind of the product manager on that side. And I think someone else as well. And then all of those kind of are underneath, in this case, Dan and the CTO. And this was the challenge, right? Is VeVe took, before it even went live. So it's been live for, about 2 years now, right? Even before it went live, there was about 2 to 3 years of development. So let's say 5 years, right? There's 5 years worth of code and development and stuff to learn. A new CTO needs to learn that. They can't learn that in a day. So that's why typically, for a developer working on one kind of feature of the app, it takes about 3 months to onboard them. Generally speaking, can be a bit more. For the CTO to get a good overview, restructure stuff, it can take, 6 months-ish. And so, now that the CTO is properly onboarded, in that interim, it was mostly, I believe, Dan was like the only one who could like shoulder all of that stuff. So now that the new CTO has been onboarded, and now that they've restructured, the tech side of the company, now it's like they've locked and loaded the gun, they've primed it, they're ready to kind of go shooting. Until before, like now, for the past, since start of the year, they were kind of juggling loads of other things, and they weren't like, fully ready to, execute. And now it looks like we can start to see, those steps where they function more as a proper developed company rather than a startup, I'd say. So I think things are going to start happening in the next 6 months, like consistently.
So what you're saying is soon, right?
Yeah, I would say probably not like right at the start of next year, but I believe Q1 onwards, we're going to start to see more frequent releases, hopefully less bugs. And, I feel like it will be similar to, any other kind of tech product where like Pokemon Go was horrifyingly terrible when it first launched. It was so buggy, but now it's very smooth and they release features like, every week. I think VeVe is going to go through that same transition.
Yeah. So what's your timeline of when you expect kind of like these big developments? I think this time last year, most of the community expected VeVeverse to roll out this year. We expected OUP. We expected Master Collectors Program. We got a little ahead of ourselves in hindsight. Moving forward and looking forward with what we know now, what do you think a realistic expectation is on a quarter-to-quarter basis?
Yeah. So right now they have a team of 20 developers. Now the issue is if something unexpected comes up and you have to move like even one developer to fix that, issue, and probably because they've got like these squads, there'll be a certain squad that bug falls under. So let's say it's an issue with, I don't know, like market listings, right? It's whoever's kind of squad is focused more on the market side of the app, they're probably going to have to look at it. And if that happens, and there's even one developer that gets pulled off, that's 5% of your dev capacity gone right away, with just one person. So it all comes down to heavily being focused on if they have any issues or bugs that pop up. Now, assuming everything goes smoothly, which never happens, then yeah, I think Q1 we could expect the first iteration of VeVeVerse, the first iteration of OUP, like implementation wise, and MCP. I feel like those will come, but that's not going to be the case, I believe, because there are currently active bugs and things that they are fixing that we know of. For example, crypto payout that ran into a kind of a bit of a bump. They have a lot of like UI optimizations that they really need to do before they roll out, like MCP and the other stuff. Queue system that needs to be implemented before OUP or MCP anyway. I have been informed that the queue system is actually complete. It's strategically they're waiting to implement it. It's not a case of that they're still working on it. Like it's ready to go. So yeah, that's reassuring. Yeah, I would say Q1 is my expectation, but I would not be surprised if something popped up and they had to push it to Q2 of next year. But next year, I feel like is going to be the year where things really start happening, because now they've got the structure in place to deliver. Like this past year, it felt like they didn't really have that structure in place because of the this new CTO having to be onboarded, kind of restructuring the team, and they had the money laundering issue as well. That really kind of, like the business side was purely focused on, all of these kind of issues. They couldn't focus too much on delivering value. They had to sort out all these legal compliance things, and also on the legal compliance side, they're still trying to operate as carefully as possible. And so those regulations have been changing at a very rapid pace this past year. But I think, from next year, we're going to have more clarity. So they don't need to operate like they're, trying to, walk on like broken eggshells here. Like they can operate a bit more freely, I'd say.
Yeah, I think people underestimate the depth of problems that are caused behind the scenes when something like that illicit gem thing goes down, and the wrench that it throws into all the plans. So, in terms of like MCP, Master Collectors Program, how do you think that'll change the landscape of VeVe? Do you think it'll help prop up prices in the marketplace and keep users engaged enough to sustain the growth?
Yeah, I mean, there are many case studies of this kind of program being effective. Some that people might be aware of, Hero, for example. And kudos to them, because they do deliver very fast on feedback, and they've got a working kind of reward system, which is still being improved on. But they recently had like an series of rewards, both physical and digital, for doing certain tasks in the app. And I noticed the effect it had on the volume on the secondary market, prices and things. So yeah, Master Collector Program, 100% is going to have a positive effect on the market. There's no reason why it should not. Both on the kind of, bringing the competitive nature of people out, that leaderboard is definitely going to, like, I felt the competition on the Hero leaderboard, trying to, get my way into like the top 50 in like the last hour. Like I was battling a few people. And not just that, but then also kind of the benefits you unlock through, the Master Collector Program as well. And then, yeah, same with OUP as well. I believe OUP is extremely needed, not just from a legal perspective, because they are registered as a utility token in Singapore. I believe they have to release OMI utility, otherwise there's a very strong legal case there, as they would be for any company that releases a token that's supposed to be a utility token, but they don't do any utility. Then that can get a bit tricky for them on the compliance side of things. But yeah, I would say both OUP and MCP have been really needed. OUP specifically, I spoke a little bit about this with Randy, is it's going to give people a reason to buy OMI, because Reese mentioned the AMA that he did yesterday, that people who transact in OMI will get rewards. And that was the one kind of key piece of the puzzle that I was looking for, is what is the reason for someone to go through the effort of going to a crappy exchange like Ascendex and buying OMI and then sending it to the app with all the bridging involved, when they could just buy gems on the web app? Like, what was the incentive? And finally we got the answer. And so, you know, as they make OMI purchasing easier, which with Wire they can do, because Wire has a gateway of doing fiat to crypto, if they can implement fiat to OMI and have that just deposited straight into your VeVe app, which is definitely possible, like that's no question asked, then yeah, they can make purchasing OMI easy, and then people transacting in that OMI, they will constantly get rewards, as opposed to gems where they get nothing. And I think a lot of people overlook the fact that when you have OMI in the app, if you want to move that OMI out of the app, there is no tax involved, no 10% tax. So you get rewards and you save 10%. Obviously, the caveat is this is going to be predominantly secondary market purchases where OMI to NFT is involved. But at the same time, we know a lot of the whales, they pretty much make their moves on the secondary. Like, look at Ray Fixie. Like, he said himself, he never ever gets anything on the primary. He does all of his moves on the secondary, as do I, mostly, as do many, you know, of the wealth, like Dr. Profit. Like, he buys all his stuff on secondary. So for them and for everyone else, it makes sense.
Yeah, and what do you make of? I want to talk a little bit about OUP later and the OMI token, but before we get there, I wanted to speak a little bit about the marketplace. And you know, the collectibles we're obviously in a bear market, right? And this is not isolated to VeVe, but you know, the collectibles are on a downward trajectory still.
Yeah.
That bottom doesn't seem to be in, and their edition sizes are quite high for, you know, for the user base that they have right now, and it's kind of draining liquidity from that secondary market. What do you make of the edition sizes? Do you think that it poses a risk to their growth by having these large edition sizes that drain the secondary, bring prices down in the secondary? Do you think that limits their growth?
Yeah, so there's two parts to that, right? So just addressing the price on the VeVe like market. I mean, I made a video like over a month ago about how I was, at that point, I'd pretty much sold nearly everything on VeVe. And that's not because I don't believe in it. Like, if I didn't believe in it, you know, I wouldn't be on the stream right now. That's because I knew what was happening in the market. Like, real inflation was up in, you know, like reported inflation is not real inflation. Real inflation was more like 30%. And the amount of rate increases we had was nowhere near enough to curb real inflation. And I gave like a proper, you know, analysis, you know, research paper that kind of highlighted that as well. And the same thing's happening in the UK. The GBP, you know, literally tanked overnight. And now rates are going to have to go up, and people's mortgage payments are pretty much going to double like next year. And that is impossible. Like, if you're someone who has a mortgage and you also like investing, well, you can say goodbye to investing or lose your house, one of the two, right? And that's going to really, really kill everything in terms of, like, you know, risk on assets. So VeVe is not immune to that. Like, stocks, bonds, you know, even like safe assets, they're going to see a bit of a sell-off there, because people, you know, they're like, they need to survive. That comes first. And Christmas is also coming, and that is the one time of the year where we see like the most like sell-offs in the market, because it makes sense, right? Like, most people aren't hardcore traders; they're normal people who just need a bit of, you know, they invest to get a bit of shopping money, bit of money for their family, and Christmas is like the time where they would spend. So, you know, a few shares that they have laying around, they'll sell it off, you know, buy some gifts, and then maybe reinvest, you know, like whenever they get their taxes back or something next year. So yeah, the VeVe market, I believe, will follow the rest of the global market, and I don't think the bottom is in for the global market at all. I think we've still got a lot more to go. Now, that being said, with the edition sizes, I am on the side that VeVe needs to drastically lower edition sizes, like really, really need to lower them. Like I would say the maximum amount of editions the Disney poster drop should have been was probably closer to 1,000. They shouldn't have done 2,000. 2,000 would have been very, very scarce, like this time last year, or maybe like November, December time last year. 2,000 now I feel like is still pushing it. I think probably 1,000 for the non Disney Sleeping Beauty one, and maybe closer to like I'd say 666 for like the Disney Sleeping Beauty one. So probably cut the sizes down by half. And the reason for that is two reasons. One is it does drain a lot of liquidity of gems that could have gone to secondary market. And that is an issue when your user base right now is kind of flat, which has been the case. You know, the blockchain data shows there's about daily active users around about 4,000. And not all of those 4,000 people are going to be, you know, actively doing every drop as well. You've got to remember that. So I would say target it so that, you know, you're targeting probably a third of those users at any one time. So if there's a third of 4,000, you know, that's 1,300. Probably set your edition sizes max at 1,300. So that's what I would do. And the second reason why I would do that is, and this is probably the more important reason, is we just spoke about MCP and OUP and how much of a benefit that would have on the app. When MCP and OUP lose a lot of their benefits when the edition sizes are too high, because a lot of their key features revolve around gaining an advantage in the drop. And that only makes sense if the drop itself is difficult to, you know, procure something. If you have a drop where you can buy stuff an hour later, it's still not sold out, why would I wager OMI tokens, or why would I use MCP points getting into a queue that gives me priority when I can just buy it an hour later and it's still there? Or why would I even bother purchasing it on the primary market when I can get it for like a 70% discount on the secondary market because there are people selling it for way below retail? It doesn't make sense. And all of a sudden, all of the development and time and effort you put into these programs, they just become heavily devalued. So what VeVe needs to do is drastically cut edition sizes to match their current user base. Like, I'm not in favor of this whole stance of we need stock in the store for the new users who are going to come, you know, later on. Add that stock when those new users are here. You know, you should be flexible enough to do that. And I don't think it's very difficult for them to scale up edition sizes when they need to. It's literally, if they've developed it correctly, it's just changing a number, really. And so for now, I think they need to match their edition sizes for about 4,000 daily users. And they need to ensure that the drops stay scarce enough that there's a reason for people to participate in MCP and OUP. Otherwise, people aren't going to be as interested in staking OMI or as interested in, you know, stacking sets. And that's, you know, I feel like that's what they need to really focus on.
Yeah, but now speaking to Daniel Lee's point, which was going to be my follow-up, you know, when they're trying to scale a business and they have to pay for the devs, if they pay for the VeVeverse to get built out and all of these things that they're looking to build, they're not getting paid the same amount of money if they're not dropping those high edition sizes. So how do they find a balance between getting paid and making sure that they're getting that money with, you know, keeping the secondary market in check?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they've got many, many options. Like, one of the biggest options they had, which they haven't quite executed yet, which is kind of, I guess, their ace in the sleeve, is people forget VeVe is a subsidiary underneath Ecomi, which, you know, is underneath the ultimate parent company, Orbis Technologies, right? A lot of projects are projects. You know, it's just a collection of NFTs or something. There's no company backing it. And because there's a company here, there is equity. And what a lot of people forget is there's multiple ways they can raise funds. Yes, they can sell the product, but they've got a ton of equity sat there, which they can use for fundraising. And that's what most of these reputable private companies do, is they go through fundraising rounds. and VeVe has the ability to do that. Now, I think that for them to scale is something that they should do anyway, for two reasons. One is it gets them access to cash flow, and they can get that access to cash flow without having to further dilute the primary market. Because, let's say in the last bull run, they had a valuation of like $1 billion, right? So, 10% of the company is worth 100 million. Like, let's say they sold off 10% of the company for 100 million. To raise that 100 million, how many drops would they have needed to do, right? Like, how much money did that Disney poster drop raise? It raised about $500,000, right?
Didn't they generate 100 million last year, the whole year?
Yeah, the whole year. And how they did a lot of drops that whole year, like when you think about it. So imagine them having to do all of that again, but in a bear market. How much would that kill the app?
While paying everyone that that would have to be 100 million profit, not base revenue.
Exactly. So 100 million after they've paid everyone. Now, ultimately, assuming a $1 billion valuation, they could sell 10% of the company and get that 100 million straight up, and then they could fund a lot of stuff. So that's why I'm not worried. They've got that ace in the sleeve where they can fundraise if they want. Now, I believe what they're looking to do is they're looking not to just sell equity to anyone, because that can be quite dangerous at this stage. Because if you sell equity to the wrong group of people, then let's say they've got like a significant enough amount of equity, they could block a lot of the things the company wants to do, or they could, really screw you up legally if they want. So that's where the due diligence and everything else comes in. Now, that being said, the other side is if they do sell equity to someone, it would be best for them to sell equity to a institution that has expertise in an area where they're struggling to scale in, right? So I think the best play they could make is sell a small amount of the company to, let's say, a game development studio, like a big one, like Ubisoft or one of those, right? And have them provide expertise in scaling up the kind of metaverse side of things. So they would get the cash flow, they would get the expertise. It would be like a bit of a joint partnership. They get the hype as well, like, because if they've got a big game studio, people would definitely, hear about them. And they can achieve everything they need to achieve without having to dilute the market at all. Now, again, that from a kind of timeline perspective, there's a lot of legal involved, there's a lot of due diligence, and it ultimately comes down to, is that something they want to do at this stage as well? Because right now, a lot of institutions and a lot of VCs and stuff, they're not investing in crypto companies. They're just trying to conserve their wealth at this point because of everything that's happening in the market. So it's not a good time to fundraise anyway. The best time to fundraise is during the bull market. So I believe they're probably going to, they've probably got enough cash flow to keep them going until then comfortably. So I wouldn't be surprised if they choose not to fundraise yet. But I believe they will have conversations and keep those channels open for when the time arises to, hey, let's sell a small amount of our company to this partner and have them help us scale up even faster in the next bull run. So yeah, I'm not too worried in terms of like, paying people. They've got options. What I'm more concerned about is kind of, in the short term, like these edition sizes, I think they should scale them back, because a lot of people, they will end up becoming less active on the market if there's literally no incentive to, participate outside of just buying things that you like.
Yeah, and what percentage of people on VeVe do you think just buy things that they like, as opposed to people who are looking at it as, what they like plus investment, but like real collectors?
Yeah, I mean, again, like it's tricky because it depends on the IP. Like Star Wars, clearly there aren't many people that Star Trek. Clearly there aren't many people that like Star Trek on VeVe. So, but there are a lot of people that like Spider-Man on VeVe. So I would say most people right now on VeVe are collectors. Last bull run, I would say it was mostly investors and traders. Because right now it's not that profitable on VeVe to buy things to flip. So a lot of people that are buying stuff on VeVe, they're buying to hold because they're not too concerned about flipping. They're here to buy stuff because they like things. And I would say that's partly why a lot of stuff just doesn't sell out in the app right now. That's not like a top tier IP with a very low edition size. Yeah, we do still get like a good amount of people who are gambling as well. We definitely see those people who buy stuff and then list it, on the secondary market for like 50% off. Like, even I've done that because sometimes to gamble, the risk to reward ratio is pretty good. Like, I'm like, okay, if I get like the worst collectible, I lose 20 gems or something like that. But if I get the best one, I make like 100 if I were to sell it, like by my prediction. So those kind of things, then it's worth it for me. That in itself is genuinely a gamble, like calculated gamble, but still a gamble. So I would say right now, out of the 4,000 people, I would say the majority of those are kind of in the niche group of collectors who collect only very certain things, and that's dependent on the IP.
Yeah. And you think that we'll get back to all-time highs, I'm assuming, on the grail pieces, the heavily sought after pieces?
I believe we need to fulfill certain conditions to get back to all-time highs. Like, so this is the thing, right? Is if you remember secret rares used to be secret rare. They were very, very rare. Like when the Moogly was out, that was the only thing. And I remember NFT Pirates bought a golden Moogly for 10,000 gems, right? And there was like very few on the app. And then when the Jermaine Rogers piece dropped, the golden, the golden choices rabbit, that one was going for like, 2K. Now you can get that golden choices rabbit for like, I don't know, like 200 gems or something. But having a secret rare was like, a flex. Now secret rares don't really mean anything. There's like a secret rare in every set. Like the recent Disney poster drop, every single one was a secret rare. So the same thing is going to apply to grails, I believe. Like there are going to be more and more grails. Like they're not going to stop. And there's going to be more top tier IP coming to VeVe, and they're going to have within their IP like considered grail pieces. So that's fine, if the user base of the app scales up. Now, the caveat, and I guess the kind of reassurance here, is the fact that VeVe only has, according to the data, the blockchain data, about 4,000 daily users. That is way, way less than 2 million or whatever, people believed last year. So that's a very thing, because that means if we're still getting this much volume with only 4,000 daily active people, imagine when we do have 2 million for real, or not, let's not jump the gun. Let's say 100,000, right? That's, that's 25 times what we currently have. And if we go for a 1-to-1 scale, if everything on the app went up by 25 times, the waltz that are like 4K right now, we could see a ceiling of 100K, assuming we get 100,000, users organically. Obviously, a lot of them will still be, secondary accounts, bot accounts. So I would scale it down to maybe like, half of that. So 50K. And we did have 50K Walt at one point. I don't know if it sold, but I do remember seeing a few sell for 45. So I do believe.
But the thing is also that a lot of those were gems that were bought for 60% off.
Yes.
So it wasn't an authentic, those numbers weren't quite real in hindsight.
Yeah. So I would say exactly what you said. Like we never saw a true app. Math.rand, yeah. I would say we never saw like a true market back in January. It was a heavily inflated market. It was an artificial market. And now what we currently have, I would say, is a deflated market, mainly because a lot of people, kind of sold off because they're frustrated, but a lot of people have been selling because of what's happening in the global market. So right now we're in a kind of, I'd say, even artificially deflated market. So once the global market recovers, I would say VeVe needs to establish that baseline of like, this is, true market prices. And then once they've got that, they need to kind of prepare for the next bull run. Like, get those features building, get that marketing machine running, like ready to drop, all these, videos and articles and partnerships, influencer stuff. And then at that point, when the next bull run comes around, we're going to see a fresh new audience come into VeVe, fresh new people who are just learning about NFTs coming in. Funny story, I was buying XRP for 2 cents back when you had to buy it on Poloniex. And that community was like the VeVe community. It was tiny. And even then, I remember there were like those random like trolls and toxic people saying XRP is a centralized shitcoin. You should only buy, Bitcoin. But then I was there when crypto blew up and XRP went from 2 cents to like, I think it was like $2.83. That was like what it peaked at, something like that. Or maybe that was £2.83. It was like $5. I can't remember. But it went up massively. And I believe VeVe will go through the same thing. Like 4,000 users is not a lot. Like it can go from 4,000 back to 100,000 literally in the span of like a few days even. So, and I believe they have the capability to facilitate that. So I wouldn't be too like worried. I mean, I always go back to the same adage, which is, buy when others are fearful, be fearful when others are, be greedy when others are fearful, and be fearful when others are greedy. So I think the same applies here. Like right now, a lot of people are fearful, which is why, although I'm kind of staying away from most things, I am holding liquidity to make purchases, predominantly in OMI, which I will then use with OUP to pick up, some Grail pieces on VeVe and get those bonus points for transacting in OMI, which, I think is going to be extremely beneficial as well.
Yeah, and like you said, when we're in a bear market like this, NFTs are all the way up on the risk curve, and so the disposable income that people do have to invest is going to things that are heavily discounted, like OMI, like Ethereum, and all the coins that are out there. And so money will flow into that first, and then after those things run up, then the money flows into NFTs. In terms of the next NFT bull run, do you think that we'll have interoperability by then? And do you think it's necessary to reach the heights that that we can reach and bring the whales in?
Yeah. So in terms of the metadata, that is already there. The problem I believe they have, kind of mentioned this, is because they were so early, a lot of the stuff that they had developed and built, it was developed and built before a lot of these standards were established, like, proper ERC 721 standards, for example. I mean, they had to literally create Go 721 specifically for VeVe. That's how early they were. They had to develop a standard for them. And so because of that, there was, obviously now having to kind of remap a lot of their metadata. That takes time. So the data is there. It's just to kind of convert it, or not even convert, just like present it in a way where it's, it works like outside of VeVe. That obviously does take a bit of time. That's going to take, a lot of liaising with the IMX developers as well, because they are on IMX now. But that's not like something that's an impossibility or anything like that. That's just something that takes a bit of time. Like, that's it. And as they scale with the new CTO, I believe they will be able to deliver that. And again, they said that interoperability is not so much a question on the tech side. It's more a question on the contract side of things, like the licensor side of things. And as far as I know, a lot of these licensors are okay with going interoperable. DC is 100% okay. I mean, DC is everywhere now. They're on Palm, they're on Wax, they're on Hero. They're doing everything. So they're on VeVe, obviously. Disney, I believe they are going to go interoperable. And the reason I say that is because there was a specific change in the clause of the terms of service, which is, certain licensors will retain the right to move their NFTs out of VeVe into their own native platforms as well. And I believe they would only make such a big change to their terms of service specifically for that is if it was for a big licensor. DC, I know is a big licensor, but they're perfectly okay with being interoperable. The only licensor that I can think of that matches that criteria is Disney. And so I believe Disney is going to go interoperable. But they did also announce there's something happening with Disney on IMX as well as Polygon. So, like in terms of being on those kind of chains, it's not an issue for them clearly. So yeah, interoperability, I think, is going to come with the artists first. I think Jermaine Rogers and Frank Kozik were, rumored to be some of the first to have their stuff interoperable because they're already on OpenSea. They've been on OpenSea for a long time. And then following that, I think, some of the other artists, and then I think DC will be the first big licensor to go interoperable with VeVe, just because they're already interoperable in so many other places. So yeah, it's not really an issue. I think sometime next year, probably closer to the end of next year would be my guess, because I think interoperability needs to come after OUP and MCP. I think OUP and MCP need to come before interoperability. Like, that just makes sense to me.
Yeah. And, you hear about Disney's plans for the metaverse all the time. I think this week there was some more news of their plans. Do you think their long-term plans involve VeVe, or they're just kind of like playing with us right now and flirting with us, and then, they're going to be doing their own thing and leaving this partnership behind at some point?
Yeah. No, I think they're going to carry on working with VeVe, because the way Disney works is they never, ever just kind of stick with one thing. Like, their whole business model is built on working through as many different platforms as possible, right? Like, if you look at everything they have, like clothing, games, food, they work with loads and loads of partners. So VeVe is their first. I believe they will work with other partners 100%, but they're going to be doing different stuff with those partners, is my belief. And as far as kind of licensed 3D premium digital collectibles, functioning metaverse, all of that stuff goes, I think that's going to be with VeVe. And these guys at Disney, like, from what I know, because I know someone in the community who is like really good friends with the guy who manages the VeVe relationship. They very positive things. I mean, Reese himself has straight up said, they're very happy. But, it's good to have that confirmation that, the people at Disney managing that VeVe kind of relationship, that they are pretty happy as well, as they should be, given how much money and how quickly VeVe raises for them. Like, I was Disney. So, yeah, like, if they wanted to, they could have stopped doing drops off the golden moments, which, they're old. I can't remember who it was, like someone who worked there quite high up, like X something. He was like saying, the golden moments are a promotional thing, but clearly it wasn't. They carried on doing multiple Disney drops after that. So, clearly Disney likes working with VeVe. So I think it's going to be a long-term thing, and they will continue working. Maybe they'll work, I'll say maybe, most likely they will work with other platforms to do certain things, but I feel like VeVe will be one of the more significant ones, the ones that people care about, to be honest.
No, that's good to hear. Now, you've sold off a large portion of your VeVe NFTs. I'm assuming that you think that OMI presents more of potential upside. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I kind of spoke about this in that old video I did. It's just because I believe that they need to implement OMI to NFT first as a priority, because of the lack of liquidity in the app. And a lot of the stuff that's going to help the VeVe NFTs gain value is going to be MCP and OUP. But for them to implement MCP and OUP, they need the queue system first. And for the queue system, it only makes sense if there is, more competition for these collectibles. And for there to be more competition, there needs to be easier liquidity. And so all of it kind of logically links together. And so ultimately liquidity comes down to crypto pay in and pay out. Now, even if you don't want to listen to what I said, David Yu himself confirmed that crypto pay in is a priority, like is a revised priority because of that, more ease of getting, liquidity into the app. And so that is going to be a part of, essentially OUP and extending on from that, like having crypto payout, working in as well. So once that happens, there's going to be more volume for the OMI token. Now, people do get concerned saying, oh, if you are doing crypto payout in OMI, people are going to sell the OMI tokens. That's going to be sell pressure. But they're kind of forgetting that with pay in, there's going to be more buy pressure for the OMI token. And if they have the rewards, more people are going to be using OMI token anyway. And if you have both buying and selling of OMI token, the total volume of the OMI token per day goes up. And I have spoken directly to exchanges. Venkatesh has really good relationships with the guys at KuCoin. I was there in Singapore and I spoke to the guys who do the partnerships at Huobi. Huobi is another top exchange. I believe OMI will probably end up on there as well. And the things that these exchanges look for is, one, they look for trading volume. So having that constant buying and selling of OMI token shoots up the volume. They hit that check mark. The other things they look for, they already have. So they look to make sure what partnerships the token has. Disney, Marvel, like they partnerships, they beat everyone pretty much. And they also look to see the community and engagement. Is the community mainly like bots, or is it real people engaging? Like, what does that look like? What does the relationship between the team and their community look like? Those are the three main things that these exchanges look for. And the one missing piece of the puzzle right now, I would say, is the volume. As soon as they hit that, a lot of these exchanges will give them the green light to go ahead with these listings. And we know that that is probably one of the biggest catalysts for OMI is exchange listings. Right now, it trades on like really not very good exchanges at all. But David himself previously said they know which exchanges we want. That's not an issue. It's all about having the OUP in place. And so again, logically, all of this links together. OUP, like I just said, has to come first. And we know OUP is a priority because of the liquidity issue. So I believe all of this is going to kind of happen before the global market kind of really fully recovers, I'd say. And before all of the things that are going to bring more people back into the NFT market and kind of into VeVe happen as well. A lot of the liquidity problems need to kind of be addressed first before any of this, other stuff that will help VeVe can take place. But that's just my view. Like, I could be wrong.
Yeah, and with all the scrutiny now on exchanges by the SEC, who has said that they're going after exchanges, do you think it'll be more difficult to get listed and they'll be scrutinized more by the exchanges?
Yeah. So I think a lot of, this kind of whole issue with tokens and securities and, listing unregistered securities, because a lot of this kind of kicked off when Jason Clayton, the previous chair of the SEC, when he resigned, he, on his last day decided to file a lawsuit against Ripple, as many people would know. And so that was a bit of some people say a bit of market manipulation there. Some people suggest that insiders knew that was going to happen. And so they, decided to short Ripple, like when that kind of kicked off, and walked away with a big chunk of cash. Because Ripple is considered a kind of a centralized token as opposed to Bitcoin and ETH, but it's also one that has huge volume. So in terms of buying and selling, it's easy to buy and sell XRP without, affecting the price too much or, having to wait for liquidity. So it was the obvious target. And also they had been criticized for that before in the past about, could they be a security because of the way that they did their ICO? So it was the perfect target, really, to hit him with a lawsuit. And so, the summary judgment, so they've submitted all the evidence for both Ripple and the SEC, and it looks like it's going for a decision to Judge Torres, the main judge on this case. And Judge Torres, from the start, I could tell was leaning more towards Ripple, and the past couple of years, it's become even more, evident because the SEC hasn't been able to satisfy, that Ripple as a token violated even one prong of the Howey test, which, to be honest, is a very outdated test. It doesn't apply to crypto, I'd say. It's more for like, let's say, like equity.
Yeah, it was created in 1933, I think.
Exactly. Like, Bitcoin came out a way after that. So yeah, it's just not applicable, which is why, at least in the UK has acknowledged that, and they've got an entire new regulation that's being developed for kind of assessing crypto tokens as different types of tokens, different categories. Singapore's already gone ahead and done that. There's criteria that you need to meet to list as a utility token in Singapore, and that's what Ecomi did. They registered in Singapore because they kind of satisfied certain group of criteria. Now, I would say, yeah, once we get the final judgment, a lot of these exchanges will feel more confident in kind of listing tokens. At the moment, they're trying to play it safe. They're trying not to list tokens that could become classified as securities, because if you're trading a token that's, a security, you have to pay like some stupid fines, and exchanges don't want to do that. So I would say there isn't too much of a concern from my perspective that any of this kind of security compliance issue with exchanges is going to affect OMI. I believe the main kind of barriers are the points that I discussed, and this came directly from the people in charge of partnerships at Huobi, which is a top tier exchange in itself. Volume, community, and partnerships, and Ecomi hits that hands down. Like, I would say in a bear market, the OMI VeVe community is still pretty crazy active, especially on Twitter, clearly.
Yeah, just hope they don't look on Twitter on those days of heavy FUD. But in terms of the OUP and what we've heard of this revised version of it, are you satisfied with what we think they have in store for us?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can talk about this for ages, but like, I would say they've just created a very, very good cocktail of catalysts that can compound to really send off OMI. And I've always been, out of like myself and like Randy, Daniel Lee, all the other guys, I've always been probably on the more conservative end. Like, I was saying, I think OMI will be like, in the short term, couple of years, probably like a 2-cent token, longer term, like a 10-cent token. But now, because that was based on the information I had before, now with some more details on the OUP, and I believe there is still a lot more in the OUP v3 to come out, a lot of stuff has really made me bullish. And I would say one of the key things is the staking, because realistically, if you exclude the teams token, so David and Dan have about 30 billion each. If you exclude that, you only really have about 210 billion OMI tokens in circulation. Now, from historical research, most projects, when they have staking, every time they've gone parabolic, around 30, between 35% of the circulating supply was purchased and locked up before they went absolute parabolic. So 30% of the OMI circulating supply is 70 billion if you exclude the kind of founder tokens. So to lock up 70 billion tokens, right? That sounds like a lot, but that in practice is actually not that much. Like, if every person who wanted to go for OMI tier 2, which is like the tier that you need to be at if you want to do renting of collectibles, the OMI kind of queue stuff, a lot of the cool like utility, you want to get to at least tier 2. So, let's say people buy OMI token at 0.001, that's kind of like my target as well. I believe when the market really kind of bottoms out, that will probably touch that. You need about $5,000 to buy that 5 million OMI. 5 million OMI, how many users need to have 5 million OMI for us to reach that 70 billion figure? I mean, if I was to kind of calculate that quickly, let's see. Okay, we need 14,000 users on VeVe to participate in the OUP. 14,000. Now, that's ignoring everything else, right? So just keep that 14,000 number of users in your mind, just for tier 2. And there are plenty of people who are going to go for even higher tiers than that. I'm going to go for the maximum tier, which is
So
apparently
tier 2 is 5 million
yeah.
OMI.
Oh, well, $5,000 worth of OMI. So
Right.
obviously, as OMI price goes up, that's less OMI.
Right.
But I think a lot of people are preparing for that, so they're trying to hit 5 million OMI just for that tier 2, or hopefully what should be $5,000 worth anyway. But a lot of people are going to go for higher. I'm going for higher. You know, a lot of the whales, they're going to slam in like 50K worth of OMI straight away. That's going to be a lot more than 5 million OMI. So even if you discount that, then you look at, you know, the OMI burn from OMI to NFT. So that 2.5% fee, that's going to be burned. And if you're getting daily volume of on the secondary market of, you know, let's say hypothetically $1 million in secondary volume, right? 2.5% of that, that's like what, 25K. I mean, we see way more than $1 million, like, you know, back when the bull run was happening. But, you know, 25K worth of OMI, that does compound quite quickly. But then you've also got like other things, like I believe they're going to have a compliant version of the OMI buybacks. So you're going to get burned from that. So all of a sudden, that 14,000 users on OEP, that shrinks drastically. And then on top of that, you've also got the kind of ace in the sleeve, which is VeVe versus land sale. And they've gone out and said, you know, if it's their own IP, they can do it in OMI and burn that OMI. So VeVe versus land sale, you know, that makes the perfect sense to do in OMI. And if you look at Illuvium, I can't remember how much it was, but it was a lot of millions that they raised. In terms of today's market cap for OMI, actually, let me just double check how much Illuvium made on their land sales.
Did you buy land in Illuvium?
Oh, yes. So 72 million. So yes, so I did have Illuvium before. I bought for 400 and I sold for 1,600, and I've just been waiting. And I think it feels like it will bottom out soon. It's been sat at $50 now for a little while, 50, 55, something like that. Illuvium raised 72 million in a bear market. Now, for perspective, $72 million is a third of the entire OMI market cap right now. One drop could wipe out a third of OMI's market cap. And if we go back to what I just said, history has shown if you can remove 1/3 of the circulating supply of a token, then it goes truly parabolic. So we have VeVe versus land sale, we have OMI staking, and again, we only need about 14,000 users. That's a very small amount to send off for OMI. And then we've got the burns from the secondary market transactions. As they bring on more users, as they scale up their drops, there's going to be more transactions. More transactions mean more OMI burned. All of a sudden, I would say we don't really need 1 million users anywhere near that to kind of see OMI go parabolic again. We only need comfortably, consistently, probably 30,000 users on the daily. Right now, we're about 4,000. And so in a bull market, we probably will see way, way more than that. And then there's all the other features that they haven't told us in the OEP, which are yet to come. And I believe the people who are on VeVe, many of them, from what I've said and spoken to, many of them have said that they don't own or don't buy OMI because there's no reason to. And I completely understand that. You know, if I was, I got into VeVe through OMI, so, you know, I've been following it a lot. But if I got into VeVe through VeVe, like through the collectibles, through collecting, and I didn't quite get crypto and OMI, then yeah, I probably wouldn't be buying it. And then, you know, on the other side is, I did run a bit of a poll where I spoke to people and asked them, how much OMI would you wager to, you know, secure a Grail level drop like AF15? And on average for a Grail, many people said they would have thrown in $100 worth of OMI. If you have a third of the supply go to OUP, which is the rumor apparently, then, you know, AF15, 10,000 editions, if every single person wagers out of the 3,300 people who get it, $100 worth of OMI, that's 330K. 330K, you know, that's like, at today's prices, that's like, I'm going to round it down a bit. That's about, you know, 300 million OMI tokens. That's a third of $1 billion from one drop. So all of a sudden, you can consistently, on top of everything else, burn like a billion a month comfortably, until Omi's price goes up so high that the burn scales down. And that's what's going to happen. That's what I believe will happen anyway. Omi's price needs to go up in order to have the burn become more sustainable. So whichever way I cut the cake, I just see Omi having huge value, both for existing users and as a way to bring in new people. Because I guarantee you, a lot of people are going to be like myself. They're going to come into VeVe because they see the Omi token just going stupidly parabolic, for the reasons that I discussed, which, when we look at it from realistic terms, it's not like a crazy unrealistic scenario to have, 14, 15 to 20,000 users come to VeVe who want to participate in OUP. I think is very, very fair. So yeah, I think risk and reward is there.
Yeah. Do you think that they've wasted an opportunity by taking so long to get the program out, and prices have been so low, and we missed out on burning through the circulating supply at these prices?
Yes, I do. If they should have brought it out, to be honest, but I understand like why there were delays. I mean, like, to be fair, right? For those who aren't like super OGs, they had a version of the MCP before, which I knew about, and then eventually got leaked on YouTube. And basically, you would buy MCP levels by purchasing them using Omi. And the problem with that is, all of a sudden, you kind of wall off your app to people who have bags of Omi. Like, why would you do that? Like, yes, there should be some kind of, let's call it pay to play feature there, but it shouldn't be your entire app. Like, it doesn't make sense to, sell MCP levels to people who just have loads of Omi. Like, where's the collecting aspect in that? And so that version of the OUP did get the MCP did get leaked. Obviously, they did not implement that. And for those who do know, the person who created that utility program, they had some disagreements with them. That's like a whole other story. But they had to revise, the MCP. And because of the initial feature of Omi to gems, in the past, you used to be able to use your Omi tokens to purchase gems, and you can use those gems to buy things. There was a few problems, compliance issue there with the App Store. The API for that broke as well. So, there was some technical issues. They had to turn it off, like it wasn't live for very long. And then through that was essentially we spawned the OUP. The OUP concept didn't exist from day one. And so, like Reese said, they've had to go through revisions to make sure that it's perfect. They don't get into any more compliance issues that slow them down. They're trying to make sure that plan is bulletproof and then implement that plan. And it sounds like the plan is pretty much nearly complete. This is their third revision of it based off of feedback. And I believe from this revision, we're going to see at least the first phase of implementation using what the details that are in there. So yeah, I understand why they couldn't, deliver it. And it is a bit of a wasted opportunity. Now, that being said, buybacks, they never said those were never ever going to come back. I believe they've got a compliant model. I've previously historically shared a version of the buyback system that is compliant. And, I have spoken to Reese about this as well. And again, it's not a case of they haven't got an option. It's they've got multiple options of buying back their tokens. They're just looking for the best one to benefit the community and for it to be sustainable. And every drop they've done, there is still, funds being allocated for that buyback fund. They have said before it will be retroactive. So once that model is out and confirmed, I believe that fund for the buybacks, it will be kind of, implemented. And then we'll start to see, at least something from a historical perspective, having a kind of positive positive buy pressure effect on the Omi token as well.
Yeah. So obviously you're continuing to stack you're becoming an Omi whale at this point. Are you an Omi maxi right now?
I would say so. I feel like maxis, they tend to kind of be in just one thing. I mean, I would call myself more of so the type of tokens I invest in are, and Omi was actually the exception. The type of projects and tokens I invest in are ones where the leadership team, the business team, they all come from very strong tech backgrounds, and that's just for me. That's just what I look for. Because if I was investing in a bakery, I would feel confident if the business side of the team, they themselves worked in the baking industry as chefs, or whatever they call them. Or if I was investing in a sports company, I'd feel more confident if the business side of the team themselves were like, people who, I don't know, like ran gyms or were ex-athletes and understand what sports people look for. If you're investing into a tech company, many times, most cases, the company usually fails if it's ran by non-tech people. And that's just the case for all industries, right? However, because of the strength of the IP, because of the partnerships, Omi was the one exception for me. Because the other type of things I invest into, or I've invested into, would be Neo, Da Hongfei, like a fantastic guy. I've spoken to the lead dev as well. I've gone into IMX, Robbie Ferguson. Like I met a lot of their devs at Amsterdam. I went to the IMX dev meet, got some cool IMX merch, and Robbie's following me on Twitter now, like surprisingly. And these guys, they come from strong tech backgrounds. The Warwick brothers as well. They've got tech backgrounds as well. And Illuvium, fantastic looking product. I think they're going to do really well in the play to earn space as far as Web3 gaming goes. David and Dan, David, hugely successful on the partnership side, but he himself is not a tech person. Dan has ran, like a web development company, but he himself is like not a dev specifically, but he works with devs, so he at least he has like some familiarity, some background there. But I feel more confident when the person who's kind of leading the way is a strong kind of engineer, or someone who's from like an engineering team, especially in this space, because then they know what to prioritize, they know what the devs need to function properly. I just feel more confident when the business side of the company has people who have worked within that industry as well.
Yeah, but like you said, the IP and the partnerships are so strong, and the community is so strong, and I think that's what's gonna win for them. What did you see that when you went to DCon UK? What was the community like there? Was that your first time interacting with the community on that scale?
On that scale, for sure, yeah. I mean, I went to some UK meetups, and then I went to like very small scale meetups at the other events I attended. So I went to the Crypto Expo in Dubai, exhibited at Crypto Expo Singapore, where we were promoting the OMI token, and VeVe as well, as part of Epico Regal, and then some UK-based meetups. So they were all quite fairly small scale. The DCon one was crazy. Like, there was video footage on the first day. Everyone came running in. It was like a stampede. And the people at DCon were like very shocked, because they'd never seen anything like that at DCon. The supervisor, the organizers, I think they were kind of pissed because of just how much of a like health and safety hazard the VeVe people created by like running in and not like lining up properly. And they paused the sale of the Jermaine Rogers t-shirts because people just weren't like listening. So it took a while to like get everyone to single file, but that showed the enthusiasm and like the strength of the community. So yeah, I saw it like face up. And then on top of that, I kind of saw like just how David kind of works, because I was exhibiting at DCon as well. So I was there before the public, and obviously David was there as well. And so that was his one time of the day where he could go around and talk to the artists one-to-one. And so I was kind of there observing, and I could see literally David securing partnership, securing like IP deals in person. I saw him do it, and I saw him sign up like 3 different artists that were at DCon in person, and that was like a really cool experience. So, and the interesting thing is, these artists that David spoke to, they already knew what VeVe was, which is really cool. I guess they kind of had to know because VeVe was the sponsor, but at the same time, like they had looked into VeVe and like, they were up for working on VeVe and releasing their IP. So we'll see some more artists definitely for sure. That's like some that were at Decon in London. But yeah, like as far as like, I guess their strengths, their backgrounds go when it comes to licensing and IP and partnership, I don't have any issues with that. Like then they're not going to get beaten on that side of things.
Yeah. Now, getting back to the macro, what are your expectations for? I know you think that Bitcoin's going lower, right?
Yeah.
What's your expectation for when the markets will turn around and we'll get out of this bear market?
Oh, yeah. So I want to see rate increases that are at least on par with, okay, probably not rate increase, but what I want to see is I want to see a consistent downward trend quarter on quarter of inflation. So I want inflation to drop back down to a comfortable 2.5%. Right now, reported inflation is in the UK is like, I can't remember, like 18% or something stupid. It's not sustainable. And for that to come down, the Bank of England needs to increase rates. The Fed in the US needs to increase rates. What happens when rates go up? People's mortgage payments go up. People's student loan repayments go up. Any kind of debt people are in, like they're going to end up paying more. If you have more debt to pay, what do? You sell off your assets, or risk going to jail, or going homeless or something. So like this is the issue: is the UK specifically was so heavy, so hardcore on home ownership. They have all these schemes that get people really cheap loans for homes. That now that these people who take out these unaffordable loans, they're going to be paying like double next year, or just on the interest. So that is not sustainable.
They don't have fixed mortgages. Most of them
do have fixed rate mortgages, but a lot of people go for the floating ones for some reason. Yeah. So also the student loans that the UK did, they have like different tiers. So the tier that I'm on, because I graduated back in 2013, my rates don't really go up anywhere near as much as the ones for people who started in like 2012 onwards. Their rates, their tuition fees were triple mine, and also the repayment rates, they are more variable as well. Like there's more freedom for them to increase it. So those people, those students are absolutely, who are now working, and many of them probably might have just purchased their first home, or I assume still renting. They're going to have a big chunk of their salary taken out for the student loan repayments as well. My girlfriend falls in that category. Like I think she's paying more on student loan repayments than I am, even though I earn more than her. Like it's crazy. And so the same thing will happen in the US as well. I know student loan repayments are pretty tough there as well.
Well, they did some debt forgiveness, student loan debt forgiveness over here, $10,000 for most people, I think, earning less than $150,000 a year.
Yeah, I read into that, and apparently that student loan debt that you're forgiven, that is the amount that you're forgiven on, you owe income tax on that, like for some reason. So if you're paying like 30% income tax or whatever it is, right? Like if you're forgiven 10K, you actually owe 3K of income tax for that year. So I'm like, that's actually a bit of a scam. Like
they're gonna get you one. It was a ploy with the midterm elections coming up, a way to appease people.
Yeah, I mean, if because of that income tax that you then pay for that year, if that ends up being more than what you would have paid for that year had they just stuck to the keeping the extra 10K of debt, which would have been paid across X number of years, then people are actually going to be even worse off this year because of that. Like in the short term anyway. In the long term it's better, but in the short term they're worse off. So yeah, a lot of people are going to be feeling the squeeze, and that's why I keep saying is you got to ask yourself, like, if you're in a position where you could potentially go homeless, is your priority going to be, oh man, I need to go and buy the newest, I don't know, like Mermicorn, or is your priority going to be, I just need to survive and make sure I can pick myself up when the markets turn around? Because if it was down to me, like, yeah, I would be cashing out my gems. I'd be selling off like whatever I can, even Omi, if it was the difference between me going homeless or not. And for many people, that is the case. is just how it is right now. And until that reverses, I think the market is going to continue to trend downwards. And a lot of these VCs, they aren't investing in this market. So we are going to be kind of flat for a while. I reckon this bear market is going to, percent-wise, is going to be worse than the last one. And I was there when ETH went from $1,000 down to $60. Like I saw that. And so, if a lot of people are new to crypto, then they've got a fun rodeo to look forward to.
So what's your expectation on say ETH and Bitcoin for this cycle?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like throwing straight up numbers out there, but just for the fun of it, like don't take this as fact or anything. This is just for fun.
Non-financial advice.
Yeah, non-financial advice. My bottom for Bitcoin is 13.5K, and my bottom for ETH is about 600.
Wow,
and I think that can be done, because I think Bitcoin bottomed at around about 18K. So I think you can drop another 50% from there. As in, like, that's not 50, like another 30%ish. And ETH bottomed down round about, I think it was just under 900. Like, that was the bottom it touched recently. So I think ETH can drop like another $300 from there. Like, that's like another 30%, something like that. So yeah, I don't see that being unreasonable. And for OMI, OMI, I think, can go from, it's trading at like 0.125 right now. I think it can go to 0.001. That's like, 25%ish, 30%ish as well. So yeah, I think the market can probably correct another 30%. And that is actually, that 30% figure is actually in line with what people are expecting the housing market to correct at, which is around about 30%. And so I think it kind of makes sense. But yeah, that's just the numbers. Like, it might not mean anything.
Yeah, I mean, no one can predict these things. For me, I don't chase the green days. I dollar cost average in on the red days when I can, and I keep some cash on the side in case we get those big dips, like you're saying. But this next year is definitely going to be, I think, a lifetime opportunity. There's what's that bird's name?
Oh, I call him Noki, like the pasta thing. So basically, I sat him next to me because if I stick him above me, because he can hear me talking but he can't see me, he makes these sounds like the Darth Vader sounds. But because he's right next to me, he can see me. He doesn't like make the sounds, because apparently these birds, like, they if they're used to seeing you and you're not around but they can hear you, they'll basically call out for you. It's like an instinctive thing for them to find each other. And so they just think I'm like a big bird. But if he's next to me and he can see me as well as hear me, he won't make the sounds. So that's kind of the trick that I need to do now, is basically when I'm recording a video or live streaming, I have to put him next to me. If I'm not, then I can just stick him back up there on the shelf.
So where do you expect OMI to go in the next bull cycle?
Next bull run. So let's say best case scenario, they get at least 14,000 people staking OMI. They implement the OUP. They have more partnerships which burn OMI, and they do the VeVe land sale. I think OMI could be, anywhere between a 50-cent to a $1 token.
During the bull run?
Yeah, and I haven't said that before, but
wow,
that's
crazy.
Yeah, that's how bullish I am now. Now, obviously, that is like perfect world scenario. Realistically, next bull run, if they kind of have some parts and they're working as expected and VeVe stays relevant, this is all dependent on VeVe staying relevant, then realistically, I would say between a 5 to 7 cent token. And I think that's most likely what it will do, because a lot of people who accumulated now, they will be selling on the way up, but there will obviously be the people buying to continue to take advantage of everything on VeVe. And so again, it comes down to VeVe staying relevant. If VeVe stays relevant and people purchase the VeVe land and they do anywhere, I think VeVe land will sell far better than Illuvium land, because Illuvium did 72 million in a bear market, and I think the Illuvium community is very strong, but not as crazy as the VeVe community. So I think VeVe could do easily 100 million in a bull run easily, and at the moment that's half the market cap of Omi. So all of those things, when you compound those things together, I think 5 to 7 cent token is not crazy. I would say ultimately it's definitely going to be higher than where it is right now, in my opinion. Like it doesn't go lower in a bull run.
So then what's your exit strategy? Because, now that this is not your first rodeo, right? You've been through a couple cycles in crypto, and you know that after that, parabolic run up, we get those 90% drops.
Yeah.
What's your exit strategy to protect yourself from that 90% drop that will one day come if history repeats itself?
So I will share with you my personal tip, and it's probably one people haven't heard of. So the moment that JP Morgan, Renaissance Capital, the moment these guys start posting articles about Bitcoin going to like $1 million or whatever, at that point I take profit. Because these guys are so scummy. Like literally today, Jamie Dimon, like he's saying that Bitcoin will never be used as like a form of like transaction or something like that. I don't know, but at the same time, JP Morgan has just invested in like multiple blockchain startups, and he did the same thing last bull run, and he did the same thing back in 2018. He was saying Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme, and then a couple of months later, they posted like Bitcoin is the best hedge against inflation. Like they basically just do this stuff to manipulate the market. So the moment these big institutions start posting overly bullish stuff, that is a signal for me to take some profit. I would probably take out like a third of what I'm holding and lock it in. And then the rest, I would have like DCA levels, like, my personal levels, whatever that might be. But that's usually what I do. I wait for that first signal of these institutions becoming overly bullish.
And then layer out whatever you want to allocate out, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So all right, so you said 50 cents to $1 in a bull run. What are you a proponent of the $10 OMI now? Are you joining Cavell?
I mean, I used to think that was ridiculous, $10 OMI. But even now, I think that's highly, highly unlikely, like this decade. But I feel way more like I feel like I can kind of empathize with the $1 OMI now, like because I used to never ever say that, but now after seeing how realistic a lot of these scenarios are to remove a third of the circulating supply of OMI, and as that circulating supply gets removed, that's going to create FOMO for more people to come in, and then that effect kind of snowballs. Like that's what usually causes these like crazy green kind of candles. We've seen that happen with things like Axis token, AXS, SafeMoon. Illuvium did something similar when they introduced the Illuvium staking rewards. That token went from $20 to like 2,000. So yeah, I would say probably not $10 for me. That's still a bit too bullish for me. But I would say, conservatively, next bull run, 5, 7 cent token, even 10 cents. Really bull case scenario, anywhere between 50 cents to $1 is actually possible. But it would depend on obviously the wider market kind of going into a bull run as well.
Yeah, damn. I don't think I've ever heard you so bullish. You've been increasingly bullish over the last weeks or so, and I guess that's all due to the utility program that's on its way. So that's really good to hear. You're not getting into anything else? Is this your main play then?
No. So my other play is IMX and IOV, so immutable excess token. For the reasons I discussed earlier, Robbie's a great guy. Their devs are, they're scaling very fast. They have good amount of cash in the bank. They're very relevant what they're doing. Like IMX, a lot of projects are going to build on it. And then Illuvium again, I feel like that's going to be one of the top competitors within the Web3 gaming space. So yeah, like these are two other projects. The one issue I have that a lot of people overlook, and this is another reason for why Omi is going to perform really well, is one of the restraints holding the Omi token back last bull run were the founder token unlocks. The amount of FUD people generated off of the token unlocks was crazy. Like there were people literally making accounts on VeVe because on May the 9th, there was supposed to be a big token unlock, and people were making accounts on VeVe called May 9th Big Dump or May 9th Reese Liar, or like, like they were just making all these accounts. And what they were doing is they were going on the auctions and bidding on every auction, and they were bidding like 1 million gems on every auction and ruining the auctions. And so you would just see loads of names called May 9th Dump, May 9th, Gorilla Dump, or like all of these names. And so there was so much FUD generated. And now Omi is actually a fully diluted token. There are no more founder unlocks. You can't use that anymore. And that is so powerful because now we know that you can't get, some of these early investors dumping on us anymore. Like it's done. It's dusted. However, IMX only has 13% of their supply in circulation. That is, they still have unlocks to go. Illuvium.
You said 13% of their supply?
Yeah, only 13%.
That's great. Yeah.
Project's fantastic. The team is fantastic. That is one issue I have.
Yeah.
And you can't count on every single person who has invested money into a project to have the best interests of the community and the project. A lot of these guys, they're just looking for that quick 10x or 20x and then getting out. A lot of these early investors, that's what they do. And so same thing with Illuvium. A lot of these kind of early investors, they've pulled out now. They got their money out back when Illuvium was pumping to like thousands, because they bought the tokens at like, $1, less than $1, like, stupid small levels. And so that's no longer an issue with Omi. So the fact that it's a fully diluted token, that's such a huge, perk that a lot of people, I think, are overlooking, is you can't get any more random unlocks being dumped on you. Like it's done.
Yeah, I do think though, with the heavy, with a large portion of tokens in a small number of hands, we're going to get a lot of sell pressure at those key psychological levels.
Yes, I believe we will.
Yeah. All right. Before we go, because we covered a lot of stuff, I want to get to know Kay a little bit more. I found out some interesting things about Daniel Lee last time I had him on, so I want to ask you some questions here. What are your favorite 3 movies of all time?
Oh, okay. So my top one, I think a lot of people have the same one, is The Shawshank Redemption. I watched it multiple times back when it like kind of was streaming. If anyone hasn't seen it, you should go watch it right now. Fantastic film.
Yeah.
Another one that I really liked was The Big Short, because
Michael
that
Perry.
was, I mean, it's not like a cinematic masterpiece, but for everyone who kind of wants to learn more about how markets work, finance, and also kind of see a bit of an entertaining like film, The Big Short, I 100% recommend it. My third favorite film, that's going to be a trickier one. So I would say, I'm trying to think which film I've seen multiple times. You know what? I'm gonna be like kind of generic. I'm gonna say, just because I'm really into Marvel, I'll say Avengers: Infinity War. Actually, no, I'm gonna say Iron Man, the first one that came out, because Iron Man is my favorite Marvel character, and I've always like been really interested in like tech and building stuff, and that's kind of like part of like what I really enjoy about this space is like all the cool things you can build. Like we've seen a lot of people in the community. This is the other thing that makes me really bullish on VeVe and the community as a whole, is I've never been in a project, and I've never been in a community of a project I've been in multiple across since 2016 when I first got into crypto. I was in the XRP community, the Neo community. I've never been in one where there've been so many really, really good, knowledgeable developers in that community. Like, Brock, he's built Fishies. Omi the Clown, he's built out the Komi Wiki, which I really like. He's got the candlesticks as well in there now, which I think he's doing for free for now. So check out Komi Wiki as well. I keep seeing Omi the Clown pop up, so I have to mention that. Like there's been so many like talented people outside of tech as well. Like there's that guy in Metaverse Life. He has his own like kind of studio that he does like cinematic stuff.
Yeah, that guy's sick. That guy makes some sick videos, man.
Yeah, no, he does some crazy stuff. And I know Dr. Profit as well personally. A lot of people just see him as like this pony that has lots of money, but I actually know like what he does for a living, like his background, and he's like he's got a very, very like professional background. I've never. It
definitely makes me more bullish to. It makes me more bullish to see intelligent people like you say who are in these fields so bullish on VeVe and on Omi. And I think Dr. Profit sent you Real glasses. Is that correct?
Oh yes, yeah, he did. I've got them. Got them over here. Yeah, he shipped these to me, which is quite cool. So I did a video where I did a drop in mixed reality. So that was like quite cool. So I've got these here. Yeah.
How are those? Give us a review, quick review.
So I would say in terms of like quality, right? So the quality obviously is like not as good as the what we've seen from the MetaQuest and the other ones, just because it's a lot more lightweight. It uses your phone for the processing. However, the development is pretty much the same. So if you want to develop experiences on a lightweight, relatively affordable wearable, then these are actually pretty decent. Or if you just want to watch YouTube whilst walking around outside, then you can also do that. But obviously, the MetaQuest is something that I'm really looking forward to because it's got full pass-through, so you can actually see everything around you and then render the 3D images like in real time. So that's great. Whereas this is kind of like more superimposing the image over what you can see, because I can see through this. These are actually glasses, but they've got like a screen inside which kind of projects the rendering of whatever it is you're looking at on your phone.
So right now, what do you see?
Right now I just see you because it's not plugged in. So the way this works is the reason why they're able to make it so lightweight is you plug in your phone and your phone does all the processing and rendering. Whereas the MetaQuest, all of the rendering is done with the chip inside the headset, which is why Oculus Quest is bulkier, whereas these are very lightweight. Like these don't hurt my nose or anything like that.
So where do you think VeVe fits into, they're obviously targeting AR there, and this is part of their long-term thing. Where do you see VeVe NFTs 10 years from now with this emerging technology? How will they make use of it?
Yeah. So as Reese said, as many other people said, the one I guess criticism I have with a lot of people and first appearances is you can't expect a first appearance of something to like moon overnight, because a lot of these first appearances only gained value because of the effect of time, especially with physicals, because a lot of the value comes from how well someone has looked after something that no one thought had value over decades. Because many things, if it doesn't have value today, not many people are going to go through the effort of preserving it and looking after it for decades. So yeah, we see now Marvel Comic 1, for example, hugely valuable in real life, Air 15. Just because a new version of it as an NFT has been released as a first appearance on the blockchain, that doesn't mean it should gain the same value as something that's been looked after and had the chance to grow over decades. Now, that being said, the digital space is growing at a far, far faster pace than the physical collectible space did over those decades. So yeah, I think a lot of these FAs, percent-wise, are going to grow faster than what a lot of these physicals grew at. But that doesn't justify, going 10,000x in like a week. Like, it needs to be organic, which is why I always say, if something just skyrockets immediately, like be ready for a pullback. Like don't buy in at the top, or don't buy in directly after a drop unless you want to play that risky game.
So do you think that they'll make use of the AR tech? Like what do you think they'll be able to do with these NFTs in 10 years? And as with newer NFTs that they develop?
Yeah, 100%. They'll make use of AR tech. That's not really an issue because, like, I'll use VeVe as an example because that's what I'm familiar with. Right? Is they built their AR on top of Unity, and I believe they are using Google AR Core for the AR rendering. Right? So they've implemented like Google's packages. They are using Unity, which is open source. Like that's a pretty standard tech stack for a lot of people who work with AR and VR to use. Now, the benefit is there's loads and loads of third-party tools being developed to work with Unity. One of those is the Niantic Lightship SDK. Now, the problem with implementing that is because it's so new, there isn't like that long-term support. So if something goes wrong, there isn't like an entire Stack Overflow directory of Q&A there. If you discover a problem to a new piece of tech, you're probably going to be the first and only person who has raised that problem because it hasn't been around long enough. So that is the issue with integrating new tech. But that being said, building on Unity does have the advantage that because everything is built on Android and iOS, Unity supports cross-platform builds. So if you build something on Android, you can automatically kind of support builds for the Oculus Rift because or MetaQuest in this case, I keep calling it Oculus Rift, because the build runs on Android on the Oculus headset. So anything you build for mobile on Android, you can actually build it for Oculus without having to do too much like additional work. So the VeVe showrooms, I think if they wanted to, they could actually have support on the Oculus, and you could log in and explore people's showrooms with the Oculus on. And I think that, to be honest, wouldn't be too difficult if they just added it as a button on the web app to then convert the controls to Oculus headset tracking and all of that. Like that is something that wouldn't be too difficult. And that would add an entirely new layer. And I think they're not going to do that yet. They're going to roll that out as part of the wider kind of VeVeverse integration. Because then, you could have the ability to first walk in and explore other people's showrooms. So the way they could do that is by using a package called Photon. So it's a very popular package used for building multiplayer experiences on Unity. Sandbox uses it. I think Facebook or Meta is also using it. So they could implement that for the multiplayer aspect, and then you could kind of explore showrooms with other people, have your own avatars, and then implement the VR build where you can then walk around in VR through logging into the web app on your headset, and then add that additional layer. And then you could go and explore, VeVe City and other stuff, and then, set up your own kind of things on the land and do other stuff. Like it all kind of builds on top of each other. So yeah, I think they've got so many different options that they can work with there. But yeah, I kind of went off on a rant. Yeah.
That's pretty dope. Before we go, favorite three musicians.
Oh, okay. Favorite three musicians. So I've always been a fan of Michael Jackson.
Even still?
Yeah. Even still, even though he's not around. Yeah. Also, I do quite like. I guess this was more from my university days. I got quite into Coldplay, like Coldplay songs, and I'd say. Oh, third one. So it's a Japanese band that I listen to quite a lot called One OK Rock. So I've been to quite a few of their concerts.
Are they like BTS or something like that?
So they have songs that are kind of similar to some of the stuff that BTS does, but they're more like they used to be more like the really heavy rock side, but now it's kind of like, you call it like soft rock. yeah, like that's I'll recommend listening to One OK Rock. So it's like ONE and then OK and then rock as 3 separate words. Yeah, pretty good music.
There you go. Kay, I want to thank you very much for coming on the channel.
Yeah, thank you, Danny.
It was a pleasure chatting with you, and we heard it here first, man. Owe me to $1 and probably $10.
We'll get to $1 first before $10.
All right, man. All right, man. You take care, everyone. Thanks for stopping by. Smash that like. If you don't already sub to Hello K, I'm sure that you do. Make sure you do that. Have a great week.
See you, everyone.
Later.